All right, I'm going to pass it off to Zan to talk about Git and GitHub.
Cool. Alrighty. So talking about Git and GitHub. Git is a specific is kind of a technology used for revision management and kind of tracking changes in your files. And GitHub is a site that allows people to collaborate across the web using Git. But Git is a separate technology, and GitHub is something that allows us to manage our Git. In the channel, can I get B's and P's if you know what Git is or if you've ever worked with GitHub before? Cool. Alrighty. Kind of a mixed bag. That's good. So I will. I'll start by kind of leading us through how we get set up using Git on our local machines. First off, you will. Oh yeah, let me share my screen. So the first thing that you'll have to do is you'll have to go to github.com and start an account there. And then once you've started an account on GitHub, you'll have to download the latest stable version of Git. And I'll post all these links in Slack after the presentation, along with some tutorials that'll kind of walk back through these steps, and also that visualize what Git and changes to a Git repo looks like. So you'll download the latest version of Git, and then once that installer runs, you will connect on the command line. You'll connect your machine to your GitHub profile. And I'll post these commands now. I don't expect you to do them right now. I'll post them again in Slack. Let's see. I think there's also some other way that you might be prompted to do to sign in to GitHub. But the way that GitHub works is that you have a repo or a repository of files. And the Git is tracking changes in those files. And it uses what are called commits, which are kind of like snapshots. So I'm actually going to start a repo. So make directory, call it getting started with Git. Terrible pun. And then I'll cd into that. Cool. And the way that I start a repo locally on my computer is to say Git in it. And this is making the assumption that I've already got GitHub set up on my machine. I'm connected to my GitHub account online. So now we have a Git repo inside of this directory, and it's tracking changes, any changes to any files you make inside of this directory, but not changes to files above or outside of this directory. So I'm going to go ahead and make an index.html. And then I'm going to open that index. Well, actually, before I do that, let's see if that's made any difference. The way that you see recent changes, or see if you check if you have made recent changes to your Git, is to say Git Status. And it's going to say, hey, look, this file in red has changed. And what we know that the change at the moment is that we created the file. So I'm going to go ahead and open that file. 1 second, Adam is going to open it up. maybe. While I'm, oh, here we go. Okay.
Are we supposed to be doing this as you're doing it?
No, because if you have GitHub set up on your computer, then you can follow along if you'd like. But if you don't, you won't be able to do it. And the installers that you have to run to install Git on your machine will probably take a little bit. And I don't know if you may have to restart at the end of those installers.
I tried to do it before, and it keeps giving me a key error.
Keeps giving you a. Do you have GitHub set up on your computer?
I've never been able to have it join with my username because of the key error.
Okay. I'm gonna keep going through the presentation, but then at the end of it, we can turn up and troubleshoot that. So I'm gonna go ahead and just make a little bit of change. Still trying to get how I finally figured out that emit shortcut that structures out the whole document, but it's not working right now. So I'm just going to make some divs, make a few changes. It doesn't really matter what I'm adding right now. The important part is that I've made some changes to my files. So now we'll type Git Status. It's still going to show us that index.html has changed, but the difference is now that we can type Git diff. And what Git Oh, I think maybe I have to add it. So in order to tell the Git to start watching files, you have to type git add, and you can add by name. You can add that file. And now if we type git status, it's going to show it in green, which means that this file is being watched, and the changes that have been made to that file are staged. And once they're staged, you can git commit them. So if I hit git commit right now, it's going to take a snapshot of what my files look like when I commit. And it's going to bring up a box, and I've actually got it linked to Sublime Text right now. I need to change that because I've been using Atom. And I'll give it the message of initial commit. I save it, and then I X that out, and it jumps back to the command line. It says one file changed. And now if I type git hist for git history, it's going to show me this one commit that I've made. And each commit has a specific ID attached to it. And so it won't really matter right now because my pointer that tells Git which commit and kind of which state of files it's in is pointing at this commit that I just made. But as I start to make more commits, so let's add some more changes. Add a header and a footer. All right, so now I'll hit Git Status, and I'll say, oh, I've got some more changes. Instead of targeting just index.html, if you do git add space period, it will start watching every file in the repo. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now all of the changes to index.html have been staged, and I'm going to commit them once more. And we'll just call this one second commit. You learn in the future that's not a very good commit message. You usually want it to be more descriptive. But for this presentation, not going to think too hard about it. So now if I type git hist, it's going to show me multiple commits. Here's my initial commit. Here's my second commit. I can check out, and checkout will take the pointer that is pointing to your current location in the Git history, which is called the head, and it will point it at whatever ID you give it. Oh, I didn't copy that all the way. All right, head is now at that initial commit. And if I look back, it's changed my file structure because we're looking at a previous snapshot of what my files look like. If I go back to my second commit, if I take the head and I point it back at that snapshot, then the files have now changed back to their state when I made that second snapshot, that second commit. Let's see, before I move on, are there any questions on what we've covered so far?
Is it pretty much standard practice in the industry to use the terminal to do all of Git? Or I know, like, I have a GitHub desktop application that it seems to do the same thing, but makes it a little bit easier to understand. Is that used or no?
It is industry standard to use the terminal. It's okay to use the graphic interface while you're getting used to the idea of Git, but I would suggest that you move to the command line as soon as possible, because you'll find that your Git workflow is actually going to be a whole lot faster once you know the command line workflow. And I know that right now it seems like a lot, but there's actually only a handful of commands that you'll be using most of the time. And so once you kind of have those memorized and you understand how they're working, it'll make things move a lot faster.
So I just say to clarify, like right now, everything Zan is doing is like just local on his computer. He has installed this program Git that is totally working locally to keep track of his versions. What it's done under the hood is like if he navigates to his folder, Getting Started Git, and he says LSLA, like, which is going to show all his hidden files, we'll see now that he has this dot file, this .git file, where all of these versions are secretly being kept. You can poke around in there. You can totally like CD into it and see like kind of the way that Git is actually keeping track of all of these versions, which gets like very, pretty soon it's kind of unreadable. The different names that they're giving to the versions, but that's all it's doing. It's totally local on his computer. Nothing he's doing right now is like GitHub. He hasn't created anything on his actual GitHub account. He's just locally working on his own, doing his own thing on his computer, keeping track of these changes that he's making, so that if he does make a like kind of error that he realizes far later, he can just go back and just start back where he was, like from square one.
Yeah, and so it's a way of kind of keeping track of those changes. And if we do want to, let's say I wanted to add another feature and I'm not sure it's going to work, maybe it's going to break what I already have working, I can say Git Checkout Branch, and then I pass it a branch name, so we'll call it new branch. Cannot be resolved as a commit. Let me see if I have. All right, so now I've switched to this new branch. So I can go make some more changes on this new branch. And I will commit those changes. And now I can say, let's see, I'm going to say git branch so I can see what branches I have are. Okay, so it highlights I'm on new branch. I also have my master branch. So I'm actually going to git check out this other branch. I'm going to git check out master. Master is pointing at whatever the last commit was that we were pointing at when we were on master. So it's going to point back at that commit. All right, so now it will show that I'm on master, and you'll see that it's taken away those changes that are on the other branch, because right now it's pointing at the state of master. But if I went and checked out my new branch, if I went back to it, it's going to switch my files back. Oh, whoops. And now we're back at new branch. So you can, when you learn how to do this, you can be kind of adventurous, because you can go on another branch. You can play around. If your code breaks, you just jump back to the other branch, or you go back to a previous commit. And this is all just happening locally. However, maybe I'm ready to push this up to my GitHub. So what I'm going to do is go to GitHub, and I'm going to start an empty repo. And you don't actually, I don't think you actually have to name the repo the same as the directory as it's in your computer, but I am going to name it that just to be just to make it easy. I'm going to set it to private for the moment, because I'll probably get rid of it in a little bit. And then we will create this repository. So now this empty repository is existing up on my GitHub account in the cloud. At the top of the repo, there is a URL, and this URL points to this repository's Git. I'm going to copy that URL to my clipboard, and I'm going to I'm going to add a relationship between my local version of it and the version of it in the cloud. I'm going to say git remote add origin, meaning I'm adding a remote origin of the repo that is on my local machine. And then I will paste in that URL. Now those two repos are linked, the local version and the version on my GitHub. And if I've made changes to the files and I want to push them up to GitHub, let me check that I don't have any uncommitted changes. Looks like we're good. Now I'm going to git push origin. Actually, I'm going to check out the master branch. I'm going to go back to master branch. All right. So I'm going to say git push. So we're pushing our changes to our origins master branch. Git push origin master. Cool. And now those changes should have been added on GitHub. Yep. Now index.html has showed up. And it sees that the only branch that we pushed to so far is the master branch, so a new branch hasn't showed up. And it shows our Git history right here. There is another way of initializing a repo, is that I could have created it on my GitHub account. So I'm going to jump to another one that I started. And you can grab that URL, and you can say Git Clone. Actually, I'm going to jump up out of this repo so I don't have two Git repos in there. So you can say Git Clone, and then you copy and paste that URL. And now you have a version of that repo on your machine that is already connected to the copy on your GitHub account. So I think that's probably enough Git for right now. We will have some later lectures on Git, specifically collaborating with people using GitHub. I do want to check if there's any questions on what we've covered so far. And I'm going to paste some links to tutorials into Slack, and I encourage y'all to go into those tutorials, try to get your GitHub set up, try pushing up your projects, try cloning down a repo that you make there. And if you have any questions, like Nissa was saying earlier, we're going to have office hours throughout the week so you can schedule time to troubleshoot stuff or ask any questions. But do we have any questions right now?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Is it possible that maybe we can have all the steps outlined somewhere so that we can exercise ourselves?
Yes. I'm going to post 3 separate tutorials that kind of walk through all these steps and getting them set up.
Yeah. Because I think it's something that we have to get used of, familiar with. So I mean, something that is, that we need to do every time we have to commit some codes online. So yeah, it will be better if we have an outlined process.
If you say that last bit again, Pascal.
I was saying, since it's something that we'll be doing, frequently, so it's better than we have, let's say, an outlined steps so that we get to be familiar with them.
Well, I think that I'll post those articles, and I would say get set up and try to push up your project from the hackathon. And also, a great way to get used to it is to start committing any changes that you're making when you are going through the exercises each day, and then pushing up those changes each day to your GitHub. And that's a good way to practice adding changes and committing changes and pushing changes up to a repo. Also, Nick Randall posted a link that we have on the whiteboard into the chat here, Git immersion. That's a great kind of like step-by-step tutorial that gets you familiar with typing each of the commands.
Yeah, sure. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've always heard that you should make sure that the things that you post up to your GitHub profile are very well written and are kind of your best pieces of work, because employers and people kind of check out your profile in order to see what you're capable of.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work with Git? Am I misunderstanding what your GitHub profile is versus what Git is? I mean, if I'm pushing up random little snippets of code here from remote prep that probably has a lot of errors and could have been done a little bit better, won't that be kind of pushed into my profile, and then people are going to see it and think that maybe I'm not as good of a programmer as I am?
Well, I would say you should add READMEs to all of your repos, because since it is kind of your social profile as a programmer, you kind of, when people come to check out a repo, you want to be able to give the code some context, and that README is going to show up on the front page of the repo and kind of explain what they're looking at. And it's perfectly okay to be like, hey, this is a learning project that I worked on while learning. and then maybe add a link that says, if you want a better representation of my work, go check out this repo over here, or a link to a site that you built, an app that you built. That's a perfectly acceptable way to go about it. Another thing is that if you want to, they have paid plans starting at $7 a month, and you can make repos private. And then lastly, you can always delete repos if you want to later on. That said, one of the things that shows up prominently on the front page of your GitHub profile is a history of your commits. And it shows not of specific commits, but it shows how frequently you've been committing and for how long. I don't know, like list if you've had any streaks, meaning you're committing every day. And it's always good to see GitHub profiles that are very active. And I don't know if deleting a repo that you've committed to a bunch will erase the history of those commits from your GitHub profile. That's a question that I don't know the answer to off the top of my head. Go ahead.
I was going to say, George, I think one of the most important things GitHub shows is just progression and commitment. So like you're starting right now, I mean, like if you're doing work in remote prep and it's, March, and you're pushing up to like you decide to initialize like a remote prep repo where you're pushing your code into there. Then like as you do more projects, maybe you build a project that you're specifically proud of and you push that up to GitHub, and that happens, April, and then you do more advanced projects. I think that actually shows a good progression to say like, hey, this is where I started. Like, yeah, that was in March and I've learned a lot and I've done this. Also, when you are going to be like applying to jobs or like trying to show off your work, it's unlikely that an employer is going to like very thoroughly check out everything in your GitHub. You are going to point them where you want them to go. Like, here's a project I worked on, check out this app I built. And they will probably go and like really poke around, see how that code is written and see how the syntax is. Like Zan said, if you have a repo from, March that says, hey, this is me like trying some new stuff out, they're probably not going to be like, I'm going to go in there and like really criticize what's going on. I think just having things on your GitHub is a great thing to be like, hey, this is where I started. This is when I started. And I've been actively like learning and improving as I go. I think that's a great thing to show on your GitHub.
Cool, thanks. I'm gonna probably try to check it out and see if I can post some stuff.
Cool. Are there any other questions before we wrap up for the day? After we finish this, I can help you with that issue that you brought up earlier. All right. Righty then. I'm not seeing any questions, so I'll go ahead and end the presentation on Git and GitHub.
Awesome. Thanks, Zan. So you guys should go ahead and try to push up, like Zan said, your hackathon project from yesterday. What you're going to need to do it is just Git installed if you haven't followed the installation instructions for Git. I think those were sent to you in like an intro email that actually came from admissions, Hack Reactor admissions. And once you have it, all you need to do when you're in it, like Zan said, is git init, make your initial commit, and then when you go to GitHub to hook it up to your local, those steps are outlined, like how he did git add remote, add origin remote. That's all. Like, that'll all be lined out for you as soon as you hit the plus button. So if you forget, you're like, what was that exact syntax? GitHub walks you through what exactly you need to put in your command line. So don't be afraid to poke around. Like, really try to get something pushed to GitHub. And if you are hitting a roadblock there, you don't know the answer, or you can't find the answer in the links that Zan posted, like definitely find us, because we want to help you start getting things up to your GitHub, or at least understanding how to get them up there. Cool. I don't have anything else. If there's no more questions, we can end just a couple seconds early. And the office hours, like always, are available. I think Zan has some in the mornings before class, and I have some after class. So take advantage of those.
Do you have availability right now? I can pull up the thing, but do you have a meeting at the moment?
No, I am available from 12 to 1. I think there were some signups. I think there were still some spots open, though. I haven't looked at it in a second. Yeah, there are still spots available today. From only one spot is booked.
All right, I'm signing up.
Perfect. George, I'll see you there. Everyone else, sign up if you're interested, or we will see you guys tomorrow to talk about a raise. All right. Have a good morning.